So, welcome this lovely Sunday evening. Tonight we are live on Facebook with Neil Wilkie, who is presenting at the conference in May. Welcome, Neil, and thank you for joining us this evening.
Thanks, Karen. Thanks, Shannon. Looking forward to an interesting 20 minutes or so.
Yes, absolutely. Shannon's here to keep an eye on Facebook.
Yeah.
So we will just crack on. So Neil, as I said, you're presenting at the conference in May. The relationship paradigm. Do tell us a little bit more about yourself and your presentation.
Okay, so myself, yes, where do I start? I was born very young and I'm now considerably older. So, yeah, I had a fairly conventional upbringing, went into business, and my belief at that stage was happiness came from success, and success was measured by having a big job, earning lots of money, and having a big house and cars. And so I pursued that path for too many years, really, until one morning I woke up and realised that wasn't giving me fulfilment.
Right.
All I was doing was working really hard to recreate, to try and purchase replacement happiness. And that was the first time I actually started to examine my life and to reflect on what I'd done, but also what I wanted to do and what would give me happiness and fulfillment. And I guess I was in my mid-40s at that stage.
Wow.
Um, I know I look much younger than that, but and that's where I first came across NLP because I'd had training in coaching, had some training in counselling, and also trained in hypnotherapy, and those were useful and interesting, but they didn't quite hit home for me. What I was looking for was something which would enable me to fully understand myself, but also to give me tools to change my state and help other people change theirs. And so my NLP journey started then, and it started in a in a hut in the woods in Hampshire with Reg Conlin, Pegasus NLP.
Oh, okay. Yeah.
It was a wonderful experience. A group of 12 of us growing together really on our NLP journeys, and I learnt a lot quickly. I learnt that there's a lot more to learn as well, and started to apply that in my life. And that led me to the realization I needed to shed my expectation that happiness would come from success in business and to do something totally different. So I sold my businesses and started the journey into psychotherapy and started
Okay.
working with successful but unhappy business owners who, they had the big house, they had the Ferrari, they had the token wife, but still weren't happy and
Yeah.
didn't really understand why. And I guess I'd been on that journey myself, so I could understand where they'd been and why that wasn't working for them too. So that also led me into relationships because their focus on earning money to buy stuff generally meant that their relationships suffered significantly.
Mm.
And also at that time, my then wife, we'd been married for 20 or so years, realised we were on very divergent paths. And so negotiated as gentle an ending to that really long-term commitment as possible. And that taught me that the traditional model for relationship counselling certainly didn't work for me. To try and compress your life story into a 50-minute segment was difficult.
Yes. Yes.
So I created a different form of relationship counselling. It was, first of all, much more intensive. Sessions are much longer. Secondly, there were two of us, which gave a very different perspective, much more balanced. And thirdly, we're very outcome focused. So rather than wallowing in the past, as all good NLPers would say, you can't change what's happened, but you can change how you allow it to affect you in the future. So getting people to understand how they got to where they are and then moving on from that to the outcomes they wanted, either to fall back in love again or to realise that actually they're no longer compatible and they needed to part amicably and to create new relationships in the future. So that that was hugely that is hugely fulfilling work, and that I guess I've been doing for the last 15 years and worked with hundreds of clients.
Right.
And then change came again for me. My second wife died of a brain tumour
Oh
after
no.
3 years together, so that was a horrible journey for her to be on, but it was good that I was able to support her in, the biggest challenge probably anyone could have in their lives, knowing that they're going to die and taking a long time to do it. And after Debbie died, I was, not in a good place, and I was invited some month later to go on a Buddhist retreat for a weekend, and the focus of that retreat was about loving yourself. And I turned up really not sure whether I should be there or whether I should just lie under my duvet feeling sorry for myself. And what I learned from that weekend, I just had a sense a whole weight was lifting from my shoulders. And I came to 3 realizations. One is I didn't need to grieve any longer, because probably from the date Debbie had been diagnosed, I'd started to grieve subconsciously. Secondly, I deserved to love and be loved again. And thirdly, I could have a good life. I didn't need my life to be constrained by what had happened in the past. So that shifted a whole lot. And some months later, I bumped into Gwen, my now wife. We've been married for 3 years, and it's been a magical experience. So on our honeymoon, she started to coach me on what was this book I kept talking about writing, and I hadn't thought about what it was going to be about. And I thought for a while, I thought it needs to be about relationships, because actually I've got something different to say about relationships. And I had, I bought hundreds of books on relationships and maybe even read some books on relationships, but most of them written as textbooks, do A, B and C and you'll end up at X. And I thought something different is needed. So my first book, I realised, needed to be written as a parable, as a story, from alternating perspectives of the couple, and to show their journey through where they'd got to in their relationship and how they solved it. And then that's where the relationship paradigm came from. I wanted a title which summarised what this was all about. And it was a model I came up with from the hundreds of clients I've worked with. What were the key elements that made a good relationship? And what are those elements which, when they started to fail, caused problems in the relationship? So the relationship paradigm is the title. And I like the word paradigm. It's slightly quirky, unusual. And so first book was eventually published January 2020. I learned that writing a book is not an easy thing to do. It goes in fits and starts, and I'm very good at finding distractions. Book number 2 was published a couple of weeks ago. So
congratulations.
there's 10 books in the series. So
10 books in the series.
That's the first one, Reset, about a couple who had drifted apart. And the second one, Recover. Oh, there
we go.
About a couple who, where there's been an affair, a betrayal, and how they recover from that. So with that, I also set myself the mission of improving more relationships than I could do just talking to people face to face. Because I learnt that one of the greatest gifts in life is a loving and fulfilling relationship with another person. And who teaches us how to do that?
Yeah.
Certainly, if you're very lucky, your parents have a great relationship, you can model theirs. My parents had an okay relationship, and I really couldn't model theirs. And I just learned by trial and error, and wow, I made loads of errors. And I think it's one of the most important things in life, and I think it's really important that people have the tools to be able to understand where the relationship is at and to improve it. So I've set myself the goal of impacting and improving 10 million relationships around the world in this decade, because I like big goals. And I've got to 2.6
Good
million
outcomes.
people. Got to 2.6 million people so far. So
That's amazing.
yeah.
I mean, it's a very powerful model to have, isn't it? Something that can assist with relationships, and certainly, I think that's a beautiful goal to have. And they do say, don't they? No man is an island. So what we need all the help we can get, I think, sometimes with just having those pitfalls and various bits and pieces, sort of taking us through those guidelines. It's a fantastic outcome. And with 2 books down, you're a quarter of the way there already. So well done.
Getting there, a long way to go, but yeah, I mean, relationship seems to be a subject which people are embarrassed to talk about. Certainly in this country, and I'm horrified by the number of clients I've worked with who've been in absolute misery for many years, when things could be so much better.
Yes,
so easily.
Yes, absolutely. So what will delegates take away from your session at the conference?
What they will be able to take away is, one, a model to help them calibrate relationships. And I'm going to split it into 2 phases. The first is personal relationships with your significant other. And the second is relationships with colleagues or clients, because the model works equally well for personal relationships as it does for business or organizational relationships.
Brilliant.
So, the starting point is, how do you calibrate your relationship? You can ask somebody a question, what's your relationship like? How good is it? But it really needs to be broken down into elements before you get any meaningful calibration. So that's stage 1. You can calibrate your relationships with your significant others. You can calibrate your relationships with clients or colleagues. Then secondly, what can you do to improve those relationships? And they will be given steps, ideas to improve those relationships. And then hopefully get into a virtuous cycle of calibrating, changing, testing. Because relationships is something I don't think has been covered that much in the NLP conferences in the past. So
no, we have. There was a couple of years ago, but it is, and the fact that you're covering all relationships, certainly a vast majority of relationships, does mean there's something for everybody in your session. So even if they don't have an intimate relationship, we all have a relationship with somebody.
Yes, you cannot not have a relationship. Yeah.
Very good. And very true.
Yeah.
So obviously this year's conference is in a virtual environment. We were discussing earlier about how we've all had to demonstrate flexibility over the last 12, 13 months, trainers and coaches alike. So how are you planning to add value to the delegates, for the delegates in a virtual environment?
Well, fortuitously, I'm married to Gwen, who is possibly the world's leading expert on creating transformational change in a virtual environment. So,
oh, cool.
She's written a book on the subject, which came out a month ago, which is #1 in Japan, #5 in USA, and #4 in the UK. So, yeah, she's used to running transformational events online for hundreds of people. So right. I shall be tapping into her a little bit, but yeah, is about ensuring it's broken down into small chunks, smaller than would be the case in a face-to-face presentation, but also using the chat rooms and getting people to break out into groups as much as possible to allow them to coach each other in pairs or in triads, and yeah, giving them simple small steps to take and play with them, and then come back and give some feedback. So doing it in a virtual environment has its challenges, but also opens up more opportunities. You can get many more people in the room, for example. You can get much closer involvement, maybe, than you can do in a face-to-face room.
Yeah. Yes, I think it was Robert that said, Robert Dilts said, the beauty about training in a virtual environment is that everybody has a front row seat.
Yes, yes.
So it's, and you mentioned calibration, so I'm imagining that that being able to calibrate when you've almost got that zoom lens makes it slightly easier.
Yes.
Brilliant.
And
So yeah, go on.
sorry, carry on, Karen.
No, I was going to say, so what does the NLP conference mean to you?
Well, what it has meant to me in the past is a meeting place of diverse people with diverse ideas, where you can have challenging conversations, interesting conversations, accidental conversations. You know, what I love about the NLP community is just his open-mindedness.
Yeah.
You know, we cover a whole range of topics under the umbrella of NLP, and that just seems to be getting broader and broader every year. And you know, there's lovely moves into fourth generation NLP, etc. So yeah, the range is just absolutely mind-blowing, and it's a great way of immersing yourself for a few days in new thinking, to meet people you haven't met for a couple of years, have conversations with them, and just take yourself out of the day-to-day stuff and to be in a very welcoming, open world.
Yeah, thank you. It is lovely, and our intention is to recreate that in the virtual world, because I think that's what, you know, people have said. It is a very nurturing environment to immerse yourself in, and that's our intention, is to create that in the virtual world, and I'm sure Gwen could help us with that.
Absolutely.
So yeah, so Shannon, have we got anybody on Facebook?
We have a couple of people watching with us at the moment. No questions as of yet, but if they do come in, we can put them to Neil at some point as well.
Absolutely. Yeah. Yes, keep an eye on Facebook, because there's quite often there aren't that many people watching live. However, because it's on Facebook, people will pick it up afterwards, and suddenly the views go up really well. And of course, again, that's the beauty of recording these things, is that they are there embedded on Facebook forever and a day.
So, absolutely. No, I'm very happy to answer any questions anyone.
Thank you, Neil. So just as a reminder to everybody, Neil is, as I said, Neil is presenting at the conference. He's presenting on Saturday the 15th at 8 a.m, an early start for us.
Wow.
Neil. So
the days are very long, aren't they?
Well, there's a big gap in the middle.
Okay.
So that's the intention, is to, you know, because we can appeal to a worldwide audience. Yeah. We've got and it follows the same format as the in-person conference. So 90 minutes, half an hour break, 90 minutes. But then there's a big gap in the middle of the day, so people can, if they choose, go and have a siesta. Certainly make a 3-course meal. They'll have time to do that. They can also drop in and watch the NLP Awards, which will be taking place over the lunchtime break, and then come back in the evening or sort of afternoon for sort of 4 till 8:30, something like that. Again, with breaks in the middle. So yeah, we're gonna have an early start. And as I said, you're presenting on the Saturday the 15th at 8 a.m. BST. It'll be by then. British summertime will have kicked in.
Wonderful. And the sessions are recorded, aren't they? Which is
yes.
Great.
All the sessions are recorded, and they will be available on the conference platform for 6 months afterwards. So it's going to be nearly 80 hours of NLP presentations over the 3 days. And all of us, we've said, you know, normally we're too busy working to actually get to any of the presentations, and we will be during the conference this time, but we too will be able to attend the presentations afterwards.
Yeah, which is brilliant, because in the face-to-face conferences, there's always the dilemma: do I go to that one or do I go to that one? And and it's nice to be able to go back and to reflect on and remind yourself.
Absolutely, and that's a really important point, Neil, because it is that it's the opportunity to absolutely immerse yourself in the presentations, and then if you want to go back afterwards and write notes, that's absolutely fine, because they'll be there, and that's a luxury that we haven't had in the past. So I think that the immersion in being in the present moment for all of the presentations will be just an amazing experience, I think.
Yes.
Yeah. So
Looking forward to it.
yeah, oh, we are too, actually. Yes, we are. We're sometimes a bit worried about the technology, but that's fine because all our stewards are absolutely brilliant. We've got a fantastic steward team who will be assisting everybody, including us. So we'll be there to do some other things. But we're really looking forward to it, and we're really looking forward to your presentation as well. So thank you, Neil, for joining us this evening, and we will see you in May.
Looking forward to it. Thanks, Karen. Thanks, Shannon.
Thank you. All right, take care.
Thank you. Have a good evening.
And
Thanks.
you too.
Bye.
Bye.
Bye.